When the truth is found to be lies, and all the joy within you dies. Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love.
This city desert makes you feel so cold. It's got so many people, but it's got no soul. And it's taken you so long to find out you were wrong when you thought it held everything. You used to think that it was so easy. You used to say that it was so easy. But you're trying now.
I'm telling you that until you understand the laws, the symbols, the emblems, what these words mean, you're never going to suspect how far gone we really are. Did you know, for instance, that your birth certificate is a security on the stock exchange in the New York stock market? Did you know that?
Now, it's the Wild West because there is a lack of legal rules regarding the use of facial recognition in the states and at the federal level, generally speaking. Read here. I have entirely failed to perceive how it is that the passenger in a public conveyance becomes identified, in any legal sense, with the driver of such conveyance. Such identification could result only in one way, that is, by considering such driver the servant of the passenger. Joint Enterprise Doctrine in Automobile Law, April, 1931, by Joseph Weintraub, here. Our mothers are bus drivers. No, they are the bus. See, they're the vehicle that gets us here. They drop us off and go on their way. The problem is that we keep trying to get back on the bus, instead of just letting it go. Tony Soprano. Riders on the Storm? Riders on the good ship Lollipop. It's a ghost ship. You gotta love this giant Tootsie Roll. Mashup video. Our Father who is a term of art, born in the district of criminals, and Halloween be thy name. Yet are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. John 8:44-45. The blessing to the endless sin, the endless whining sounds. You'll be praying till next Thursday to all the gods that you can count. My God, Jethro Tull, video. The Black Queen chants the funeral march. The cracked brass bells will ring to summon back the fire witch to the court of the Crimson King, in the court of the Crimson King, here. Living people have no heirs, they only have prospective heirs. Yesterday, all my troubles were so far away. Now I need a place to hide away. The Beatles. Blackside Apartments, Cape Fear, 1991. A federal enclave is established when a state cedes jurisdiction over land within its borders to the federal government and Congress accepts that cession. Read here. Needful Things, 1993. Yeah, his mother died while he was serving. The farm got sold off. He got the proceeds. Cape Fear, 1991. You talkin' to me? Just ask Robert De Niro. The Achilles heel is you, here. Omen. He'll not allow the child to be born. He will kill it while it slumbers in the womb. The Omen, 1976. The Omen concerns a young child replaced at birth by American Ambassador Robert Thorne unbeknownst to his wife, after their own son was murdered at the hospital, enabling the son of Satan to grow up with wealth and power. They are surrounded by mysterious and ominous deaths, unaware that the child is the Antichrist, here. They name the child Damien. Then, Robert is appointed U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom. Condoleezza Rice with 666 at United Nations. Of Oz Emerald City, was it named after the emerald cockroach wasp? Let's consider the topic of redistribution of income, shall we? As with most good ideas, concerns over redistributing income have mostly to do with who's in charge of the redistributing. Toto, I've a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. Dorothy. Clearly, the 1% have way too much of it in the current pyramidal structure. Imagine a pyramid inside a circle. This is America's accurate map in spite of lamestream propaganda to the contrary. The ones who benefit from the structure are located in the penthouse at the top. The ones who build this Tower of Babel with our sweat equity are located at the bottom. It's on the dollar bill.
I grabbed a few things and got in line. There was about 5 carriages ahead of me. I started humming the song quietly to myself, and out of nowhere a man walked up to me, put out his hand like he had something to give me. I opened my hand to receive whatever he was giving me, and he dropped a bunch of coins in my hand. He said, "Here is the change you need and have been seeking." He then walked away and I never saw him again. I was confused. I had plenty of money. Why did that man think I needed change and then gave it to me? As I walked my car, I looked at the sky again. "Wow," I said, and then it all hit me.
There were 2 candidates. One received a majority of the vote, about 1/4 of the slave population. I asked why the new master can rule over all the slaves, if he only received votes from 1/4 of them. My master said, because some wise masters long ago did it that way. Besides, you are the slaves, and we are the master. I did not understand his answer, but I believed him. My master knows what is best for me.
Their document served the American aristocracy, not the people. In fact, the document was never put before the people for ratification. This is because it was openly opposed by the majority of men and women in the original 13 states. The Constitutionalists were guileful traitors whose attendance at the Philadelphia Convention was kept secret for an entire generation. Patrick Henry was one patriot who understood what was going on. He did not attend the convention in Philadelphia, and said, "I smell a rat." He was dead right. But there was more than one stinking human rat running loose at the convention. The traitors referred to themselves as Federalists because they knew the people would tend to think of them as servants of America. And they were right. Their smokescreen worked wonderfully.
Few people are aware today that the history of the United States, since the Revolution in 1776, has been, in large part, the story of an epic struggle to get free, and stay free, of control by the European international banks. This struggle was finally lost in 1913, when President Woodrow Wilson signed into effect the Federal Reserve Act, putting the international banking cartel in charge of creating America's money. Paul Grignon, Money as Debt. Thomas Jefferson mentioned the nefarious power of the bankers directly, saying desperately, "I wish it were possible to obtain a single amendment to our Constitution, taking from the federal government the power of borrowing."
They named their new company the United States. Let me be very clear about this important issue by restating it. In 1871, Congress created a private company called the United States over which they had complete legal control, and gave it powers not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States. The District of Columbia, aka the State of New Columbia, is unlike any other municipal corporation on the planet.
The few who understand the system will either be so interested in its profits or so dependent on its favors that there will be no opposition from that class, while on the other hand, the great body of people, mentally incapable of comprehending the tremendous advantages, will bear its burden without complaint, and perhaps without suspecting the system as inimical to their best interests. Rothschilds. When these congressional members walked out of Congress, it adjourned sine die, meaning it adjourned without a definite return date. This left less than the constitutionally required amount of congressional members to perform business as usual for America, making Congress as a whole legally powerless. Congress ceased to exist as a lawful deliberative body. Consequently, the only constitutionally lawful American authority that could declare war was no longer lawful, nor present. Without the proper legal authority to do so, Abraham Lincoln executed Lincoln Executive Order 1, "We shall have world government whether or not we like it." The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent. February 17, 1950, James Paul Warburg, the former president of the Council on Foreign Relations (CFR), speaking to the U.S. Senate.
The IMF is an agency of the UN, Black's Law Dictionary 6th ed. pg. 816. The U.S. has not had a treasury since 1921. 41 Stat. ch.214 pg. 654. The U.S. Treasury is now the IMF, Presidential Documents Volume 29 No. 4 pg. 113, 22 U.S.C. 285,288.
The term citizen was used in Rome to indicate the possession of private civil rights, including those accruing under the Roman family and inheritance law and the Roman contract and property law. All other subjects were peregrines. But in the beginning of the 3D century the distinction was abolished and all subjects were citizens. 1 Cell. Essays in Anglo-Amer. LH 578. Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1914. The United States gained what was already given in the Treaty of Paris 1783, namely islands off the U.S. coast. Also, two men were to be given the power to decide the borders and disagreements. If they could not, the power was to be given to an outside sovereign power and their decision was final and considered conclusive. In Article 9 it is admitted there are citizens and subjects in America. As you have seen, the two terms are interchangeable, synonymous.
I have never authorized by my own hand or blood, and by my own free will, consciously, and with full disclosure, consented to any man-created status or fiction foreign to God's law, such as that of the 14th Amendment United States citizen. In fact, no man or woman of God, would ever knowingly agree to, assent to, authorize, or consent to, any fictional creation of man, over the law and rule of God.
These proclamations give force to 470 provisions of federal law, hundreds more since 1973, particularly in the Clinton administration since January 21, 1993. These hundreds of statutes delegate to the President extraordinary powers, ordinarily exercised by the Congress, which affect the lives of American citizens in a host of all-encompassing manners. This vast range of powers, taken together, confers enough authority to rule the country without reference to normal constitutional processes. Here are just a few executive orders that would suspend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These executive orders have been on record for nearly 30 years and could be enacted by the stroke of a presidential pen. Executive Order 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. Executive Order 10995 allows the government to seize and control the communication media. Executive Order 10997 allows the government to take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels and minerals.
General's Office, Washington, April 24, 1863. The following instructions for the Government of Armies of the United States in the Field, prepared by Francis Lieber, LL.D., and revised by a board of officers, of which Maj. Gen. E.A. Hitchcock is president, having been approved by the President of the United States, he commands that they be published for the information of all concerned. By order of the Secretary of War, E.D. Townsend, Assistant Adjutant General. Instructions for the Government of Armies of the United States in the Field. Section I, Martial Law Military Jurisdiction Military Necessity Retaliation.
How is it that each of them comes to be stripped of his natural, God-given rights, and to be incorporated, compressed, compacted, and consolidated into a mass with other men, whom he never saw, with whom he has no contract, and towards many of whom he has no sentiments but fear, hatred, or contempt? How does he become subjected to the control of men like himself, who, by nature, had no authority over him, but who command him to do this, and forbid him to do that, as if they were his sovereigns, and he their subject, and as if their wills and their interests were the only standards of his duties and his rights, and who compel him to submission under peril of confiscation, imprisonment, and death? These usurpers condescendingly and graciously presume that those whom they enslave, consent to surrender their all of life, liberty, and property into the hands of those who thus usurp dominion over them. And it is pretended that this presumption of their consent, when no actual consent has been given, is sufficient to save the rights of the victims, and to justify the usurpers. As well might the highwayman pretend to justify himself by presuming that the traveler consents to part with his money. As well might the assassin justify himself by simply presuming that his victim consents to part with his life.
Prior to the war there were 5 times as many abolition societies in the South as in the North. Virtually all educated Southerners were in favor of gradual emancipation of slaves. Gradual emancipation would have allowed the economy and labor system of the South to gradually adjust to a free paid labor system without economic collapse. Furthermore, since the New England states were responsible for the development of slavery in America, Southerners saw the morality claims by the North as blatant hypocrisy. The first state to legalize slavery had been Massachusetts in 1641, and this law was directed primarily at Indians. The Attorney General, who was required to reside at the seat of government, continued to function ex officio as the circuit attorney for the circuit, including the seat of government within its territory. The circuit attorneys appointed pursuant to this act generally continued to be known as state's attorneys, as they had previously been titled. See Revised Code 1827, p. 79, Laws 1835, p. 44. Under the 1845 statute, the Attorney General retained the duties set forth in the 1827 statute.
So IRS moves by presumption, against the man by calling him a person that is defined in the code at section 7343, but the man assumes he is a person in common words and not terms of the law writer. Now this is where the use of the word including by IRS means restricted to that specific meaning and cannot be expanded upon. The use of the word term quite clearly states it is not a word that can be expanded or contracted upon when reading the definition in the above dictionaries. Therefore, including cannot be expanded upon to mean any more than what is described by the term. The 14th Amendment, July 28, 1868. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Organic Act of 1871, an act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. In 1871, 3 years after the illegal ratification of the 14th Amendment, the government defaulted on its war debts, forcing America into bankruptcy. 12. What resulted is considered the death blow to the United States for America. 13. On February 21, England claimed what was theirs, according to international law, and incorporated the 10-mile square that is Washington, D.C. 14. England also incorporated the American Constitution and names for its new corporation, such as the United States of America, U.S., and USA. So now let us recap exactly what happened to our unalienable rights during this season of treason. On February 21, 1871, under the guise of creating the seat of our government with the Organic Act of 1871, the legislative branch, through Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, creates a fully private and for-profit corporation that they control, and name it, believe it or not, the United States. Just prior to creating that private for-profit corporation, they, the legislative branch, put in place through military threat, the totally unlawful and never ratified 14th Amendment of July 28, 1868, that just happens to place every U.S. citizen squarely within the jurisdiction of their new company. If you look through the copy of the United States Constitution found in the 1990 edition of Black's Law Dictionary, you'll notice something very interesting. The word citizen is always capitalized until you get to the 14th Amendment, which was adopted in 1868. After that, it's no longer capitalized. This isn't an isolated occurrence either. In the definition of Dred Scott case, a Supreme Court case decided before the 14th Amendment, they capitalize citizen, but everywhere else in the dictionary, where it refers to the laws of today, the word isn't capitalized. As you shall see, this is just one small indicator of many that the 14th Amendment created a new class of citizen.
The person allows us to function with limited liability, read, less responsibility. Our primary legal person, or ID card, consists of birth date, eye color, hair color, height, weight, and now fingerprints and retina scans, as if that's all we are. Nowhere on an ID card are your soul, or your personality, or your hopes, dreams or capacity to love ever mentioned.
22. If we have followed the ways of men, can we return to the ways of the Lord? Who has deceived us? Who has devised this plan of confusion and deceit? Woe unto you, lawyers, for ye have taken away the key of knowledge, ye entered not in yourselves, and them that were entering in ye hindered. Lu 11:52. Who shall we seek to know the truth? Who shall we cry out to, man or the Lord God? The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. He walked with me in peace and equity, and did turn many away from iniquity. The legislature cannot lawfully control you because you are a flesh and blood human being. God alone created you, and by right of creation, he alone can control you. It is the nature of law, that what one creates, one controls. This natural law is the force that binds a creature to its creator. God created us, and we are, therefore, subject to his laws, whether or not we acknowledge him as our creator. The way the state gets around God's law and thereby controls the people is by creating only an office, and not a real human.
And, after having created an emergency situation, and a tremendous depression in the Republic, Congress used its emergency authority to remove the remaining substance, gold and silver, from the medium of exchange belonging to the Republic, and made the negotiable instrument paper of the legislative democracy Federal United States a legal tender for continental United States citizenry to use in the discharge of debts.
Such is the condition of every citizen of the United States today in law, managed by the government agencies acting as executors, administrators of their estates in bankruptcy, legal incapacity, and civil death as assets of the bankrupt U.S. The U.S. is property of the private real parties of interest, the creditors in bankruptcy.
The United States government, in order to provide necessary goods and services, created a commercial bond promissory note, by pledging the property, labor, life and body of its citizens, as payment for the debt bankruptcy. This commercial bond made chattel property out of every man, woman and child in the United States. We became nothing more than human resources and collateral for the debt.
When a free man of the Republic is dragged into court, it will be presumed that he is a subject with a social security number, thereby affecting a public interest and needs to be regulated under public policy. This presumption needs to be properly destroyed if we want to be free. I believe that the state of Iowa was created with its 1846 Constitution and is the Republic, while the 1857 state of Iowa is a federal state for passing law on U.S. citizens, like Puerto Rico as the proper name of a part of the United States. Definitions follow. A license to lie to the senses equals license, a permit to lie to the senses. Jude chapter 1 verse 4 For there are certain men who crept in secretly, even they who were of old written of beforehand to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness, and denying our only Master, God, and Lord, Jesus Christ. Strong's Concordance, lasciviousness, wantonness, word number 766 unbridled lust, excess, licentiousness, lasciviousness, wantonness, outrageousness, shamelessness, insolence.
This city of London Temple was the headquarters of the Templar Knights in Great Britain, where order and rule were first made, which became known as code. Remember all these terms, such as crown, temple, templar, knight, chancel, chancery, court, code, order and rule, as we tie together their origins with the present American temple bar system of thievery by equity, chancery, contracts. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness.
When you walk into a court and see this flag, you are put on notice that you are in an admiralty court and that the king is in control. Also, if there is a king, the people are no longer sovereign. You're probably saying, this is the most incredible thing I have ever heard. You have read the proof, it will stand up in court. But wait, there is more, you probably would say, how could this happen? Here's how. Admiralty law is for the sea, maritime law governs contracts between parties that trade over the sea. They substituted law enforcement officers for peace officers. They substituted county sheriffs for sheriffs of counties. They substituted attorneys at law for counselors in law. They substituted the Secretary of War for the Secretary of Defense. They substituted Virginia for the Virginia State and then substituted the Virginia State for the State of Virginia and then substituted the State of Virginia for the State of Virginia, and now the crazy bastards are trying to substitute Virginia for the State of Virginia. The average Christian in this world has been sold on the idea that they can buy their way into heaven, through the middleman salesman priest of their prospective church and its particular doctrine, as if this will somehow wash away their sins, just like the 3 credit rating agencies can magically wipe away a bad credit score. If I were a man on the street and I made the claim that for $100 I could save your soul by somehow bypassing God himself and his wrathful judgment, I'd be locked up in the nearest asylum, run by nuns, and charged with conspiracy to defraud the public. But if I incorporate and call myself a 501c3 religion, suddenly that same sales pitch becomes authorized by law and fervently protected by government, all 40,000 of them. The surname and social security number are examples of government property used by men against God and nature that should be rendered back to Caesar. Surname, N. L. Super and nomen. 1. An additional name, a name or appellation added to the baptismal or Christian name, and which becomes a family name. Surnames, with us, originally designated occupation, estate, place of residence, or some particular thing or event that related to the person. When property of any kind is registered under a surname, that property and land becomes government-owned, where the person can only be a tenant user. An artificial fictional thing citizen cannot own anything in nature, thus men as persons demons have no real property rights in the United States. All rights of persons are in fact ultimately artificial, and thus are ultimately always considered legally alienable under the doctrine of necessity. Let me alone that I may consume them. Exodus chapter 32 verse 10. The wicked shall perish, they shall consume. Psalms 37-20. Note, your status as a consumer is literally a hidden reference to Gentiles goyim as persons serving mammon, thus the biblical reference to the wicked shall perish is akin to burning in hell, which legally means being consumed by greed and held in an open-air debtor's prison called the United States. Prepare to be astounded, as secrets hidden from the world for over 2,000 years are revealed in their entirety. They are no less than the true gospel of the kingdom, spoken of in Matthew chapter 24 verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When this gospel is revealed to all nations, it will cause a change in the world such as has never been seen in the history of mankind. It will herald a new way of life, one of love, peace and harmony, and it will open the gates of heaven. Logian 3, Jesus said, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. Logian 11, Jesus said, this heaven will pass away, and the one above it will pass away. The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. In the days when you consumed what is dead, you made it what is alive. When you come to dwell in the light, what will you do? On the day when you were one you became two. But when you become two, what will you do? Interpretation of, this heaven will pass away, and the one above it will pass away. Jesus was speaking to others concerning their minds. Each mind is a kingdom, a piece of heaven given to them. Logian 24, his disciples said to him, show us the place where you are, since it is necessary for us to seek it. He said to them, whoever has ears, let him hear. There is light within a man of light, and he lights up the whole world. If he does not shine, he is darkness. Interpretation of, show us the place where you are, since it is necessary for us to seek it. Jesus was of course, in the kingdom of heaven, his enlightened mind. It is obvious that the disciples knew where the physical body of Jesus was, but what they wanted to know, was where he was as a spiritual being. Logian 33, Jesus said, preach from your housetops that which you will hear in your ear. For no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel, nor does he put it in a hidden place, but rather he sets it on a lampstand so that everyone who enters and leaves will see its light. Interpretation, tell others the things that I teach you, do it openly and without fear. Let them see the light of your new mind and don't try to hide it. Do not be afraid to make public what is in your heart. Logian 41, Jesus said, whoever has something in his hand will receive more, and whoever has nothing will be deprived of even the little he has. Interpretation of, whoever has something in his hand will receive more. Whoever has love in their heart, will be able to invest that love by giving it to others. When that love is returned, he will have increased the love in his life. Logian 51, his disciples said to him, when will the repose of the dead come about and when will the new world come? He said to them, what you look forward to has already come, but you do not recognize it. Interpretation of, his disciples said to him, when will the repose of the dead come about, when will the spiritually dead find rest and peace? Note, there is no rest or peace for the spiritually blind and dead, because they think they are of the world, and therefore must act according to its ways, which puts them in conflict and competition with others for the things of the world. In 70, Jesus said, that which you have will save you if you bring it forth from yourselves. That which you do not have within you will kill you if you do not have it within you. Interpretation, the love that you have within will save you, if you have faith in it and express it. The absence of love means the absence of truth and empathy. The Holy Spirit is the Spirit of love, the Spirit of God. If you have love, then the Holy Spirit is with you, therefore also, so is God. Logian 77, Jesus said, it is I who am the light which is above them all. It is I who am the all. From me did the all come forth, and unto me did the all extend. Split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. Interpretation of Jesus said, "It is I who am the light which is above them all. If there is even a little darkness in a man, then he is full of darkness." Jesus was the light above all men, because there was no darkness in him. In him there was only truth. Logian 86, Jesus said, "The foxes have their holes and the birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head and rest." Interpretation, the deceivers have their places to hide, and those who think they have all that they need, rest in their ignorance, but the Son of Man can find no place to rest his mind, for his love for others compels him to end their ignorance and suffering. There is nowhere to lay down the burden. Logian 94, Jesus said, "He who seeks will find, and he who knocks will be let in." Interpretation, those who seek do so with sincerity, and it is they who will find. To knock is to focus your attention on and to question, ask. You knock on a door because you want to be let in. Likewise you ask a question because you want to be let in on its truth. See also in Matthew chapter 7 verse 7, "Ask, and it shall be given you, seek, and ye shall find, knock, and it shall be opened unto you, for every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened." Logian 109, Jesus said, "The kingdom is like a man who had a hidden treasure in his field without knowing it. And after he died, he left it to his son. The son did not know about the treasure. He inherited the field and sold it. And the one who bought it went plowing and found the treasure. He began to lend money at interest to whomever he wished." Interpretation, it should be realized that this parable describes the journey that the self takes, from the time that it loses its true identity, until the time it finds it again, and achieves enlightenment. 26-26 And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and blessed it, and brake it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." Interpretation. The bread represents the knowledge of truth which he shared with his disciples, spirits. It is the truth that is the body of Jesus, and this is confirmed in his words, "I am the way, the truth and the life." What is the yellow brick road? Bricks or ingot bars of gold. The character known as the straw man represents that fictitious, all caps, legal fiction, a person, the federal U.S. government created with the same spelling as your birth name. Remember what the straw man wanted from the Wizard of Oz? A brain. No juristic person, legal fiction, paper corporation has a brain because she has no breath of life. What did he get in place of a brain? A certificate, a birth certificate for a new legal creation.
The lawgiver on the other hand makes laws for the sole purpose of controlling others and having power over them, and breaking those laws carries a penalty of harm or loss. In other words, people are forced to obey them even if they are unjust. Laws are made to take power away from people, and they are always enforced with violence, either physical or psychological. This is why it was said, "Let him who possesses power renounce it." Gospel of Thomas, Logian 81 It is laws that are unjust that tempt people to lie and to do what they hate. The only laws that stand eternally, are the laws of love, truth and understanding.
And of course you need to read the Earth Charter. It's all there. I mean, it's public knowledge, but you're never going to hear about it. Because the media is controlled, and your minds are molded, your ideas are formed, your taste suggested largely by men you have never heard of.
Vile, venal, depraved, constantly bankrupted, violent, and disgusting empire of lies that the pontiff and the monarchs rule over, or the United States we are owed by you and Elizabeth II? We need to get this straightened out, Francis, and right about now. Feed my sheep, he said. That doesn't translate as rape and kill them because they are stupid. It doesn't translate as dumb them down some more so that they can't even read English, much less read Latin. And then use that same ignorance as your excuse to enslave and steal from them.
All caps name is used to finance the system of power and self-enrichment of US Inc. and its owners at the expense of the enslavement of the people. They do not possess any authority to use the name based on the unlawful object of intent to perpetrate the scheme to reduce the people to slavery and peonage by engaging in fraudulent concealment and a mountain of other crimes. In addition, it is the living being to whom the name refers that provides the labor, substance, and life force that gives value to the strawman, and thereby authorizes the real being to claim superior title to it.
8 Peter, Jesus asked. 9 And you? 10 Who do you say I am, Peter? 11 Peter was quiet for a moment before answering, reflecting upon the answer that had been given him in his mind. 12. You are me, Master, the Son of God the Christ. 13. You are one who has learned this awareness, and so you share it with us, as Thomas has pointed out. 14. Jesus smiled. 15. This you did not learn from men, Peter. 16. This you learned from the voice of our Lord within.
Each Sestu Vitae Trust, created since 1933, represents one of the three crowns representing the three claims of property of the Roman cult: real property, on earth; personal property, body; and ecclesiastical property, soul. Each corresponds exactly to the three forms of law available to the Gala of the bar courts. Corporate commercial law, judge is the landlord; maritime and canon law, judge is the banker; and Talmudic law, judge is the priest.
What is truth? Why is it so important to know the truth? For does it not say in the Bible, John chapter 14 verse 6 King James Version KJV 6 Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life; no man cometh unto the Father, but by me. That being that said, and the only way to return to God is through Jesus, and it being that Jesus is literally defined as the truth, is it not a correct statement that, if you know the truth, you will know Jesus? And what exactly is it to know Jesus? Could it be, that to know Jesus, is to know him personally?
The District Clause in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution states, the Congress shall have power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever, over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as may, by cession of particular states, and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of the government of the United States. The land on which the district is formed was ceded by the state of Maryland in 1790 following the passage of the Residence Act.
Martial rule was kept secret and has never ended. The nation has been ruled under military law by the commander-in-chief of that military, the president, under his assumed executive powers and according to his executive orders. Constitutional law under the original Constitution is enforced only as a matter of keeping the public peace under the provisions of General Orders No. 100 under martial rule. Under martial law, title is a mere fiction, since all property belongs to the military except for that property which the commander-in-chief may, in his benevolence, exempt from taxation and seizure and upon which he allows the enemy to reside.
In 1864, when the so-called Civil War was near its end, Congress passed an act to provide internal revenue to support the government and to pay interest on the public debt, and for other purposes. Therein Congress reconstructed the word state as follows, with words in brackets having been added for the purpose of clarifying how this anti-constitutional legislation should be properly read and interpreted in a jurisdictional sense. Chap. CLXXIII. An act to provide internal revenue to support the government, to pay interest on the public debt, and for other purposes.
Constitutional rights in America are simply those dictated by the Crown Temple and enforced by the Middle-In Templars, bar returners, through their franchise and corporate government entity, the federal United States government. When a state citizen attempts to invoke his constitutional, natural, or common law rights in chancery, equity courts, he is told they don't apply. Why? Simply because a state citizen has no rights outside of the rule and codes of Crown law. Only a state citizen has natural and common law rights by the paramount authority of God's law.
The Supreme Court's anti-constitutional interpretation of the person therein will be forthcoming. And a mere 5 years later Congress once again assigned an artificial meaning to person in, once again, an Internal Revenue Act, the relevant portion quoted below. And where not otherwise distinctly expressed or manifestly incompatible with the intent thereof, the word person, as used in this title, shall be construed to mean and include a partnership, association, company, or corporation, as well as a natural person.
Accordingly, all races are considered joined together as 14th Amendment DC citizens, subjects, since being enrolled into commerce by their birth certificate, and by subsequently confirming their consent, when applying for such unilateral contracts as the driver's and marriage licenses, Social Security application, selective service and voters registration, bank accounts, credit applications, W-4, and 1040 income tax contracts, etc. For those who would choose to follow Satan, God provided flaws in the Constitution. Art. Remember when your mother and father used to tell you to stop cursing when you screamed swear words at people? Unfortunately, your parents most likely did not know the occult meaning behind the term stop cursing. To curse at people is to cast spells on them. Why do you think the act of writing words is called spelling? One of the most powerful word magic spells ever created by mankind is the name spell. The name spell is one of the most powerful spells for deceiving and controlling you, which is why it is so effective for tricking you to believe that you and your name are one and the same. Within the word or spiritual seed is the source of vibration. The word vibration is phonetically vibration. Vibration allows the creation of sacred geometry, one of the foundations of the universe. The word verb in vibration comes from Latin verbum, which means word in English. Verb is defined by dictionary.com as any member of a class of words that function as the main elements of predicates, that typically express action, state, or a relation between two things, and that may be inflected for tense, aspect, voice, mood, and to show agreement with their subject or object.
In other words, Jesus' word, logos, represents law, order, and truth. An important fact about the verses of the Bible is that they are often written in parables. Furthermore, they contain esoteric inner and exoteric outer knowledge. Most people who read the Bible lack spiritual knowledge and wisdom because their minds have been programmed to accept and process exoteric outer knowledge. Therefore, they lack the skill to learn and understand esoteric inner knowledge, preventing them from deciphering the parables of the Bible into spiritual knowledge.
When spoken out loud, words transform into frequencies and vibrations which can be used to direct energy. This is one of the first steps to creating magic effects. Most people will laugh at the idea of magic being real, but if only they knew what magic really is and how it is being used to control them, they would not be laughing. The world is dominated by magic. Until you understand how magic is used to control you, you will never know how the world really works. In the past, the dark magicians found out that using swords and physical weapons to force people to work for them without pay was not very efficient. Instead of forcing people to work for them without pay, the dark magicians discovered that when they domesticated people to think that they are free and trick them to work for paper money, they can use the power of words written on contracts to bind people to the terms and conditions of those contracts. This allows them to enslave people without their knowledge. The reason that stealth slavery is the best form of slavery is because it tricks people to think that they are sovereign. Based on the definitions and information so far in this article, as the living man, male or female, you are the king of your kingdom of God, the realm containing your mind, spirit and spiritual body. You are also the king of your kingdom of earth, the realm containing your physical body, house, land and property. Because you are the king of your kingdoms, the government has no lawful right to tell you what to do, as long as you do not harm other people and damage their property.